Welcome to another deep dive with deep links. Today, we're unraveling the story of one of the most complex and intriguing characters in the Call of Duty franchise, Raul Menendez from Call of Duty Black Ops 2. So, grab your headphones, settle in, and let's explore the mind and motivations of a character who is not just a villain but a revolutionary, a brother, and a man driven by unimaginable loss. Are you ready? Let's go! Raul Menendez is one of the most memorable and complex villains in the Call of Duty franchise, particularly in Call of Duty Black Ops 2. His story is both tragic and compelling, shaped by a series of traumatic events that drive him to become a revolutionary leader, a ruthless terrorist, and the game's central antagonist. Menendez's character is multifaceted, combining personal vendettas, political ideologies, and a deep-rooted hatred for the Western powers, especially the United States, which he blames for his family's suffering and the world's injustices. Raul Menendez, origins and background. Raul Menendez was born in Nicaragua in 1963, during a time of intense political instability and civil unrest in Central America. His early life was marked by poverty, war, and hardship. Menendez's family was relatively well-off compared to their impoverished neighbors. His father was a successful businessman who owned a large sugar plantation. However, this wealth also made them a target. His father, José Luis Menendez, had established a business empire in the midst of Nicaragua's Sandinista revolution, a period of violent conflict between the Sandinista government and U.S.-backed Contras. During this turbulent time, the Menendez family was caught in the crossfire between U.S.-supported Contra rebels and the socialist Sandinistas. A critical moment in Raul's life occurs when his father's business becomes targeted by the Contras, who seek to use the Menendez property as a base of operations. In the 1970s, his family home is raided by the Contras, and his father is killed in the attack. Raul and his sister, Josefina Menendez, survive, but they are scarred physically and emotionally by this event. After his father's death, Menendez took over the family business, managing it with an iron fist and quickly expanding its reach into the international black market. He becomes involved in arms dealing, trafficking, and other illegal activities to fund the Contras' resistance against the Sandinista government. As a result of this early life, Raul Menendez develops a deep-seated hatred for the United States, which he holds responsible for his father's death and his family's suffering due to its support of the Contras. Josefina Menendez, the catalyst for Raul's hatred. One of the most critical elements of Raul Menendez's story is his relationship with his sister, Josefina Menendez. After their father's death, Raul takes on a protective role over his younger sister, who is severely disfigured and disabled due to an unspecified condition. Josefina is the most important person in Raul's life. She becomes his anchor, and he is deeply devoted to her. However, Josefina's frailty also deepens his resentment and hatred for those he believes have wronged his family. The turning point in Menendez's life, the event that truly transforms him into the vengeful figure we see in Black Ops 2, comes in 1986, when a U.S.-backed military operation targets his compound in Nicaragua. The CIA and Special Forces, including Alex Mason, Frank Woods, and Jason Hudson, storm Menendez's compound during a mission to disrupt his arms trafficking operations. In the chaos of the firefight, a grenade detonates, causing a massive explosion that destroys part of the compound. Tragically, Josefina is caught in the blast and dies as a result. Josefina's death devastates Menendez. He blames the Americans, particularly Alex Mason and Frank Woods, for her death, believing that they intentionally killed her. From this moment on, Raul Menendez's hatred for the United States and its allies reaches an all-consuming level. He vows to make the world pay for what happened to his sister, setting the stage for the events that follow in Call of Duty Black Ops 2. Rise of Cortes Die and Menendez's new mission. With the death of his sister fueling his hatred, Menendez channels his grief and rage into a new mission, to dismantle Western power structures and avenge his family's suffering. Menendez begins to build a following among the disenfranchised and disillusioned, branding himself as a revolutionary figure. He establishes Cortes Die, an international populist movement that positions itself as a defender of the oppressed against the corrupt elites of the world. Under Menendez's charismatic leadership, Cortes Die gains millions of followers worldwide, particularly among those who feel left behind by globalization and economic inequality. Menendez leverages his vast network of black market contacts, arms dealers, and hackers to turn Cordis Die into a formidable global force. The organization uses social media, propaganda, and cyber warfare to spread its message, and soon it has become a political and social phenomenon. Menendez's message resonates with a broad audience: the poor, the disenfranchised, and those who have suffered under the existing world order. He portrays himself as a liberator, a Robin Hood-like figure fighting against the perceived tyranny of the United States and other Western powers. As the leader of Cordis Die, Menendez embarks on a campaign of cyber terrorism, espionage, and direct attacks against U.S. and allied interests. His ultimate goal is to bring about a global revolution that will overthrow the current world order and punish those he deems responsible for the world's suffering, particularly the United States. Menendez's strategy and ideology. Raul Menendez's ideology is a mix of anti-imperialism, populism, and anarchism. He believes that the world's current power structures are inherently corrupt and oppressive, favoring the rich and powerful at the expense of the poor and weak. Menendez sees himself as the champion of the underprivileged, advocating for a radical redistribution of power and resources. He argues that the only way to achieve true justice is to bring down the established governments and institutions and replace them with a new order that represents the will of the people, specifically, the will of those who have been oppressed and exploited. To achieve his objectives, Menendez employs a multifaceted strategy. Cyber warfare. Menendez is a master of cyber warfare. He uses advanced hacking techniques to infiltrate and disrupt the networks and infrastructure of his enemies. This includes attacks on military installations, financial institutions, and critical infrastructure. Menendez's ability to conduct cyber attacks on a global scale makes him a uniquely dangerous threat, capable of crippling entire countries without ever firing a shot. Manipulation of public opinion. Menendez is a skilled manipulator of public opinion. He uses social media and propaganda to spread his message and build support for Cordis Die. By appealing to the grievances of the disenfranchised and marginalized, Menendez is able to rally millions of followers to his cause. He also exploits the media to portray himself as a victim of U.S. aggression, further bolstering his image as a champion of the oppressed. Direct action and terrorism. While Menendez is capable of subtlety and manipulation, he is not above using direct action and terrorism to achieve his goals. Cordis Die conducts numerous terrorist attacks, assassinations, and sabotage operations around the world. Menendez sees these acts of violence as necessary to bring attention to his cause and to destabilize his enemies. Building alliances and exploiting rivalries. Menendez is a master strategist who understands the importance of alliances. He works to build relationships with other anti-Western groups, rogue states, and criminal organizations. At the same time, he exploits rivalries between his enemies, pitting them against each other to weaken their ability to oppose him. The villain in Call of Duty, Black Ops 2. Menendez's role in Call of Duty, Black Ops 2 is that of the central antagonist, with the story set across two different timelines, the 1980s and 2025. The game's dual timeline narrative explores Menendez's rise to power, his motivations, and his elaborate plans for global chaos. 1980s, the origins of Menendez's vendetta. The 1980s portion of Black Ops 2 follows CIA operatives Alex Mason and Frank Woods as they pursue Raul Menendez in various covert missions around the world. During this time, Menendez is seen as a rising figure in the international arms trade, using his illicit wealth to fund various insurgent groups and further his own agenda. His hatred for the United States becomes personal when Mason and Woods, during a CIA-sanctioned operation, inadvertently caused the death of his sister, Josefina. This event fuels Menendez's vendetta against those he holds responsible, particularly targeting Woods and Mason. Menendez captures Frank Woods and tortures him, using the opportunity to express his deep-seated hatred for the United States and to promise revenge. During the rescue attempt by Mason, Menendez manipulates them, orchestrating the death of Alex Mason in front of his son, David Mason, codenamed Section. This begins a new cycle of vengeance and sets the stage for the future conflict between Menendez and the younger Mason. 2025, Menendez's master plan. By 2025, Menendez has become the leader of Cordis Die, a massive populist movement with millions of followers worldwide. He now possesses significant power and influence, both in the real world and in cyberspace. He has orchestrated a plan called the Cortes Die Plot, which aims to bring down the United States and its allies by turning their own weapons against them. Menendez's plan involves hacking into the U.S. military's drone network and using it to launch a series of devastating attacks against American and Chinese interests. He believes that by causing chaos between these two superpowers, he can create a new world order free from Western imperialism and dominance. Menendez uses David Mason, now a soldier following in his father's footsteps, as a pawn in his plan, manipulating him emotionally and psychologically to further his objectives. Throughout the game, Menendez reveals the depth of his hatred for the United States, often taunting David Mason and questioning the morality and righteousness of his actions. Menendez's rhetoric challenges the player's perception of right and wrong, and his charisma makes him a complicated villain, one who, despite his methods, is driven by genuine grief and a desire for justice, however twisted. The Cortes Die attack and its aftermath. In the game's climax, Menendez successfully takes control of the U.S. drone fleet and uses it to attack key cities across the United States and China. This causes widespread destruction and panic, pushing the world to the brink of a new war. At the same time, Menendez leverages his influence over Cortes Die's millions of followers, calling for an uprising against the world's corrupt governments. The game's ending varies depending on the player's choices throughout the campaign. If the player captures Menendez alive, he is incarcerated, but he still manages to incite a global revolution from his prison cell. If Menendez is killed, his death sparks widespread chaos as his followers rise up in anger, believing him to be a martyr for their cause. Regardless of the outcome, Menendez's actions have far-reaching consequences, and the world is left on the brink of a new and uncertain era. The game leaves players with a sense of ambiguity about Menendez's legacy. Was he merely a terrorist and a madman, or was he a revolutionary whose grievances, however extreme, were grounded in real-world injustices? Analysis of Raul Menendez's character. Raul Menendez is a complex character who embodies the theme of the morally ambiguous villain. Unlike many traditional villains in the Call of Duty series, Menendez is not driven by a desire for power or conquest. Instead, he is motivated by personal loss, ideological conviction, and a genuine belief that the existing world order is corrupt and must be overthrown. His actions, while extreme and often brutal, are grounded in his traumatic experiences and his sense of righteousness. Menendez is also a character who challenges the player's perception of morality. Throughout Black Ops 2, he questions the motives of the United States and its allies, pointing out their own history of violence, intervention, and exploitation. His criticisms of Western imperialism, while coming from a place of anger and hatred, are not without merit, forcing the player to consider the complexities of global politics and the often blurred line between heroism and villainy. Legacy of Raul Menendez. Raul Menendez is considered one of the most iconic villains in the Call of Duty franchise, praised for his depth, charisma, and the moral complexity of his character. His story highlights the human cost of war and political conflict, showing how personal loss can drive individuals to extremes. Menendez's character arc also serves as a critique of global power structures, questioning the morality of both the protagonist's and the antagonist's actions. In the end, Raul Menendez is more than just a villain. He is a tragic figure whose life is shaped by loss, betrayal, and the desire for justice. His story is a reminder that the line between good and evil is often not as clear-cut as it seems, and that the consequences of violence and revenge can be far-reaching and unpredictable. Conclusion. Raul Menendez's story in Call of Duty, Black Ops 2 is a deeply layered narrative that explores themes of revenge, loss, power, and justice. As the central antagonist, Menendez is both a product of his environment and a self-made force of change. His journey from a young Nicaraguan boy to a feared global revolutionary leader is marked by trauma and tragedy, driving him to become a symbol of resistance against perceived oppression. Through his complex characterization and compelling backstory, Menendez remains one of the most memorable characters in the Call of Duty series, embodying the game's exploration of the gray areas of morality and the human consequences of global conflict. And that wraps up our deep dive into the mind of Raul Menendez. What do you think? Was he a villain, a hero, or something in between? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this exploration, make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the bell icon so you never miss another episode from Deep Links. Don't forget to give this video a like and share it with your fellow gamers and friends who love a good story. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and stay curious.